Hi, Nancy.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
I can, but I have my volume off because I don't want to get feedback from TV.
Okay.
Speaking of which, I'm going to go make sure that's going.
Okay.
Hello again and happy Thanksgiving Eve, if that is such a thing.
I'm just telling everybody to have a pleasant day. You know, happiness is hard.
That's true.
After the year everybody's put into, it's really difficult.
That has been a bit of a challenge, to say the
Yeah.
least.
It has. David, these numbers, telephone numbers that you have,
Yes,
if I lose a connection, can I pick up the phone and call one of those numbers?
you can. And it should log you right back into the meeting.
Okay,
We won't be able to see you, but we'll be able to.
that's all right. You don't need to see me.
You should be able to hear, and they should be able to hear you too.
Okay, just in case.
Hi, Dick.
Good evening. How are you folks?
Great.
Doing well, thank you.
Okay, all ready for the big day tomorrow?
I'll
Just
be ready
my
tomorrow.
desserts.
Nancy,
Yes.
can I, my last name is spelled with an M-E-U instead of an M-U-E.
M-E-U?
Yeah, V-E-R-M-U-L-E-N.
E-N.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
My apologies.
I have a hard time with it.
Okay. Yeah, I do have it wrong. Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
not to worry.
Okay.
Thank you very
It
much.
won't happen again.
Don't worry about it. It's all good. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Y'all are a quiet bunch.
Because it's a Thanksgiving Eve, as Dave pointed out. It's supposed to be home cooking.
Who must be home cooking?
But
Who's home cooking?
Dave wants to be.
Oh.
Dave, have anyone from Plymouth Engineering come in? That would be either Keith Ewing or Fred Marshall.
Yeah, on the attendees right now, the Fullingtons and Keith with no last name.
It's Ewing. Okay, good. Yeah, it's just making sure they did show up.
I see Elizabeth's name on my screen, but I don't see that on the TV. So
There she is.
There she
I'm
is.
hiding until you need me.
There she's hiding.
Okay, Sandy, where's your smile?
No, he
Sandy's
disappeared.
frozen again.
He disappeared.
Uh-oh. Hi, Bill. Hi, Dick.
Hi, Elizabeth.
Madam Chair, when you start the meeting, I'm going to be listening, but not have my video on or my mic. And there are 3 people now as attendees: Fred Marshall, Fullington, and Keith.
Can they all hear us now?
Yes, they can watch
Okay.
your meeting. Just whenever you want to see them or hear from them, you'll have to let me know, and I'll
Okay,
click a few buttons and then it'll pop over.
right. And are the Fullingtons, have they asked to be heard tonight?
To the best of, whoops, let me, I see somebody sent something on the chat. Oh, that's Keith says he's here. To the best of my knowledge, no one has requested to speak, but certainly for anybody watching, at the bottom of your screen should be a little chat feature, and you can tap on that and send a message, or there is a raise your hand feature too, I believe, if you, I'm not quite sure how to do that myself.
Okay, so some people are attending via Zoom, but they're just there to watch.
Yeah,
And
unless you're
listen.
allowing for a public, whoops, lost them all. Unless you're allowing for a public input. Oh boy, there's a couple others. There's now Renato and Terry Jamo. Sorry if I'm butchering anyone's name.
Sandy's back. Hi, Jay.
Oh, yeah.
Had a little problem with previous computer.
Oh, okay. We saw you freeze up.
No, I just didn't want to go to the meeting.
Too bad. You're my vice. You have to be here.
I got too many vices.
Still waiting for Janice. So we're missing what? Janice and Scott?
Janice isn't coming, as last I knew.
Oh, okay.
I thought she said she was going to be away. I may be wrong, but I thought that.
Okay.
So,
I do recall. You're right. I do remember she said that because it was the night before Thanksgiving. Yeah.
her car was not in the yard when I went by earlier, which is a good indication of something.
Got one more minute.
No Scott either.
Not yet. Could be both our alternates are participating this evening.
Well, these damn computers don't always want to do what you want them to do. I mean, the other one I had is my daughter's, which works better most of the time. And it comes up and says, your audio is not working. Beautiful.
I believe Scott was having a problem with his last time.
Mm-hmm.
I probably ought to go buy a new one.
Mm-hmm.
You're nodding, yeah. Actually, it'd be easier to buy a headset with a camera
Oh, that's a thought.
and hook it up to my pedestal there, which is a far better computer than these pieces of junk.
The problem with most computers, Sandy, is the bad connection between the operator and the keyboard.
You mean the short between the headset?
Very good, Jay.
Okay, I have 7 o'clock. So I'm going to call to order this meeting of the Lincolnville Planning Board. The time is 7 o'clock, Wednesday, November 25th, 2020. I'm Elizabeth Udi. This meeting is being conducted remotely with the help of Zoom and can be watched on cable television channel 22. Present this evening are Nancy, our recording secretary, and I know David's in the cyber world out there watching. And if the other members of the board and alternates would please introduce themselves for the record.
Bill Norfleet, alternate.
Sandy Delano.
Dick from Mullen.
Jay Foster, alternate.
And also present is Frank Terrio, our code enforcement officer. So Sandy, do we need to make a motion to vote toward letting our alternates become voting members this evening?
I would suspect we do. I would make a motion that we allow our two alternates, I believe, this evening to participate.
And I need a second.
I'll second it.
And all in favor, the three of us. All right, Bill and Jay, welcome. You are voting members this evening.
Can I make
Please
a
contribute.
Elizabeth? The bylaws state, and the planning board, and also the MMA also state that alternates can be present and participate in meetings. They just don't have a right to vote on the application unless they've been designated by the chair. So participation is always something that Bill and I can do. whenever we're present at a meeting, but we have to be appointed by you to vote in the absence of a sitting member.
So I can appoint you without a motion and a vote from the board, is what you're saying?
I think that's fine. Motion is fine also, but the point is that we can participate in the meeting if we're in attendance, even though we
Yes.
don't have a vote.
Yes. And so you can make comments and guide, correct?
By the bylaws, correct. Right.
Okay, on the agenda this evening is the formal review for approval of the commercial site plan for Dr. Landry's Lincolnville Family Dentistry Office, which is being relocated and expanded in a new location that is 2138 Atlantic Avenue, map 12, lot 46. We'll review the application for compliance with the standards of the ordinance of the town of Lincolnville, and using specifically section 18, subsections 11, 12, and 13. I think now it'd be okay, David, if we want to bring over Fred and Keith.
Okay, just take a moment here.
Okay.
I also see a Christine Landry on there. Should I?
She can come over if she wants to, but she may want to sit in the background like she did at your last meeting.
All right.
Ed Marshall is the one that has been designated
To represent this evening.
To represent.
I have a couple of items for which Keith at your last meeting had stated he would be able to comment upon. So I didn't know if we want to include him this evening.
They both should be on their way.
Well, we see their names, but not their faces. Maybe they don't want us to see their faces.
There we go.
Welcome.
Good evening. Good evening.
So before we get started, I was going to say in review that the pre-application took place on September 25th, 2019. And then on October 28th, the planning board reviewed the submitted application for completeness and found it all to be in order. And we had just a couple of questions last time that came up that Keith might be able to help us out on, or Fred, both of you. First of all, Sandy had brought up the asking for clarification on the number of vehicles per day as which relates to the clients seen per day. And Keith, you said you might be able to update us on that point, we were confused about how that formula worked. Sandy, do you remember bringing that up?
I can address.
It had something to do with they anticipated seeing X number of patients per day and multiply that times 8 hours in a day, and it exceeded the what they had approval for in terms of traffic from Route 1.
Or that traffic permit?
Yep.
Frank, you were going to say?
If I could speak a little bit, the DOT permit did say that they were approved for 50 vehicles a day. And if that was exceeded, then they would have to come back for a new permit. And I think you might have a little problem with the formula that's showing they could have up to 10 patients because first of all, there's only 14 parking spots there. And so one of those is handicapped, and then we don't know how many employees are there. So that brings us down to a small number of parking spots available. So therefore you cannot have that much traffic going in and out.
Well, and also we pointed out that often people come as families, 2 or 3 kids or a husband and wife might be in the same car. So that should cut down the number of cars. Do we have any comments from Fred or Keith on that? Are we good?
Well, I'll just jump in here. The traffic generation is based on a standard that DOT accepts, which is the International Transportation Engineers ITE trip generation manual. And I believe, I'm just looking for it and I can't place it. We figured it both on the number of employees and the number of square footage and chairs, and it doesn't exceed the 50. Okay. And you're absolutely right. Frank's correct that you can't just take that there'll be 5 seats and multiply that times 8 hours a day plus staff and stuff. That is generally not the way it's been done before. And any traffic permit, I'm not a traffic engineer, and neither is Keith, but the traffic engineers, when they do a traffic study, have to use the ITE manual and that methodology. So that's what we used.
Okay, great. Everybody satisfied?
I think it's worth pointing out that the entrance permit that we have from the state does have that less than 50 per day figure in it that Frank related. So that's what's in the plan. That's what we'll be approving. That's what's going to be, on the ground and happening actually. If for some reason Frank sees that there's been an expansion, a dentist added, or a parking lot enlargement, something like that, then they'll have to come back to the planning board and revisit that as more than 50 a day, and then we'll have to take that into consideration. That would also change the state permit for the entrance.
True. True.
The reality is, if it is, that site is not set up to handle 50 per day.
At this point, right. The second thing, Jay had asked about receipt of an engineering study regarding drainage pertinent to 10.5B, which was engineering study used to determine drainage requirements based upon 50-year, 24-hour storm frequency. It wasn't in our packets, but Keith stated it had been sent to Frank. So I was, Frank, did you finally receive that?
I did not receive that, but what we do have on answer number 12, and that was pointed out by Plymouth Engineering, that the increase of the impervious surface was only 5,193 square feet. Therefore, it did not require that. And to accommodate that 5,193 square feet, they have 7 check dams in place. They have 2 outlet riprap protections in place. And so that's to accommodate that additional 5,000 plus square feet of stormwater. Now, if that does not accommodate it, then we would definitely see something immediately down at Route 1. And if that happened, then the repercussions would be DOT would be in touch with the dentistry people immediately. And they do have the capability of implementing runoffs if they needed to on both sides of the driveway. So I would say that it is satisfactory based on what they have on the plan. And if we monitor it, we can tell if that's adequate or not.
Great.
Can I add?
Go ahead.
Can I add one point? We did apply for and received approval on the 21st of October, submitted a stormwater permit by rule application to the Maine Department of Environmental Protection. That has a 14-day of approval period. We're long since past that. We haven't heard a word. Hopefully, they're supposed to send a copy to Frank. I don't know whether you got one or not. If you didn't, I can send it to you. And I also talked to the gentleman who issued the driveway permit, and Dougie, I think from DOT, and noted to him that there were a couple of, there was an existing culvert under the existing driveway that was semi-collapsed and filled, and some of the swale along there. And he said he was aware of that. He was aware that there is drainage issues along that section of Route 1 on that side, on Dr. Landry's property side. And that he said, basically, if we replace that culvert under the driveway, which we're proposing, and re-ditch that along Route 1, if there are any issues, particularly, I think he noticed towards Lincolnville Beach, there's not a culvert under some of the name escapes me, next road down or north. And at some point, DOT has to deal with that because they realize that's substandard. And felt that what we proposed is perfectly fine, but that he would keep an eye on it also.
Well, the DOT report did say that an 18-inch culvert was required to be put in place.
Okay, well, then we maybe change our plan. I thought when he talked to me, he said 15 was fine because it's sort of at the top of the hill, but
okay,
I missed that.
Yeah, the permit itself requires an 18-inch. That's on the first part of the entrance permit. And the size is 18 inches, and the culvert's got to be 50 feet long.
Okay.
So I'm unclear as to the status of the permit by rule. Has that been applied for? Has it been received? Has it been discussed?
It is
the status of the-
it's been submitted, it's been accepted by DEP, and the standard is within 14 days after they receive it, it's approved unless they say something, and they haven't said anything.
So you haven't heard anything back from them, Fred?
Correct.
Fred's absolutely correct. If you don't hear with him in 14 days, it is a go-ahead. Nevertheless, they still may monitoring depending on the magnitude of what's being permitted. So you may be okay, or you may not be okay. But nevertheless, it's not unusual that you do not get a permit by rule back
Correct.
after you've submitted it. That's the norm.
I think one thing we can keep in mind as we go through the review is that we're not creating a grade. This is an existing grade. And it's been there for quite a while with the road that's going up there is already an existing road with a building that already exists. So 5,000 square feet of impermeable surface is being added. But the buffer between that site and the road, Route 1, is existing now and has existed. And it would have showed erosion problems as they existed prior to this development. Not much is being changed here except the road's being paved and the parking lot's being added.
My opinion is that Plymouth Engineering has addressed that, Jay, by adding the check dams and the riprap in place.
And that's in the plan that we're looking at.
It's in the plan. You can see there, as I said, there are 7 check dams and 2 outlet ripraps.
Right.
Okay. So moving on, let's see, Jay had also pointed out that the site plan C2 had no approval block. If a new revised C2 has not been submitted, Frank tells me we can sign the existing one. It has
There's
a
5
small
lines
block
in
of
it.
lines. Okay. And then I just had a couple notes myself. Regarding the 8.5 by 11 floor plan in the packet, Exhibit F, as in Frank, item A1. That was the floor plan, proposed
Yes.
floor plan for the dentistry office.
Yes.
The paragraph of general notes appears twice on this floor plan.
It was
I'm
a
sure it's-
preliminary.
Pardon
There
me?
was that was the preliminary drawing given to
Correct.
for this application. The fire marshal drawing is slightly different.
Okay, so that would answer my second comment coming up. On this comment, however, the one that we have that would be filed with this site plan has 2 paragraphs of general notes. One of those paragraphs says this existing building was a storage facility. The other paragraph says this existing building is a convenience store that sells liquor and has carryout. We
It's
wondered if we might
it's
be able
the-
to replace that one sheet of paper for the packet where you can ixnay that second paragraph about the convenience store.
Yes.
Thank you. And then the other comment did have to do with the fact that the legend has your fire extinguishers, emergency lighting, et cetera, but those were not indicated on the floor plan. But as you say, that's not your fire code plan. So
That's correct.
While you're on that subject, Fred, has the building plan gone to the fire marshal's office for approval?
Yes, but I won't have a response back for at least 6 to 8 weeks. They're that
Okay.
far behind.
All right, we
Wow.
cannot issue a building permit until such time as we get that back from the fire marshal.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see. And then last I had that Frank has received the required receipts for the
Yes.
certified letters that went out to the abutters. So
have.
we are, and there have been no responses of concern to date. Correct, Frank?
That's correct.
Okay.
The reason we're laughing is we had a complaint come in, I did. And the complaint, they were all upset about the children and the dogs were going to be run over in the parking lot. And come to find out, one of the people that received the notifications to the abutters misread it and thought that the dentistry office was going to be on South Ridge Road. And so everyone on the road was up in arms. And I had to point out, no, they're 800 feet down the road.
Okay. So this is my first time at this game. From here, we move on to subsection 11, standards and criteria. Is that correct, everyone?
Yes.
Okay. So 11.1, let's see. I showed subsection 11, standards criteria. These criteria for site plan review shall be used by the planning board in reviewing applications for site plan review. And these are minimum requirements. 11.1 is utilization of site. The existing building to which you're adding less than 700 square feet, you're not developing outside the existing compound of the structure. 11.1 is about keeping it all natural, not spreading out too much. I think you guys are right on point there. Does everybody agree?
There's only one building in this plan, so that
Correct.
clustering doesn't really pertain. And the environmentally sensitive areas, I don't believe this is in an environmentally sensitive area,
That's right.
as outlined in 11.2 or B, whatever it is.
And so is it my understanding that each of these 11.1 now has to be a motion, a second, and voted upon as approved? Is that correct?
Is that correct, Frank?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
That's why Sandy does this very fast.
Yes, he does. Go for it, Sandy. Is Sandy with us?
No, I was reading, I'm sorry. Am I to make a motion to accept 11.1 as complete?
As approved or as, yes, please,
There's no, as meeting the standards, Sandy.
as meeting the standards.
As meeting the standards, thank you.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
And all in favor of approving 11.1? And Bill, you are a voting member. Thank you.
Can I just make one point here?
Yes, please.
I don't want to disagree with Frank. But what's really important here is that each individual item, as we go through them, we have a finding of fact. Some statement must be made to say that the fact of the applicant's plan meets the standard. That's got to be in the record. Voting on each and every one as we go through 11, which is an awful lot of them, you know, we've done it in the past where we've done a full review with a finding of fact on each item, and at the end of the section voted that all the items in the section met the standards and voted on the section. That makes 3 votes. We're going to be doing, what, 15 or 20 votes here in the next hour.
It's 22 different areas, Jay, and it is required that you vote on each one individually so that when you get all done going through these, if all of the standards have been met by a unanimous vote, it's an automatic approval.
That makes sense? Okay. We're going to move on. 11.2, traffic access and parking. A is vehicular access to the site must be on roads which have adequate capacity to accommodate the additional traffic generated by the development. Demonstrated on C2, you are improving the existing path into a real driveway. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And then,
We
Go
also
ahead.
changed, usually a DOT's traffic permit, why they're not really sticklers about it. They like a 3% slope going into the road. So we did do that the first, and I think your ordinance has something to that effect, the first 45 or 50 feet.
it does.
We did do that. So it's definitely improvement.
And then
The
B
reason
is,
The reason
Go
for
ahead,
that is
Jay.
you don't want a car coming down that road in the wintertime and stopping and not being able to stop and slide out into Route 1.
Yep.
That's why that 3% thing is in there. So,
Yep.
Yeah, it is in the ordinance and it is in the DOT permit that they have for entrance. And it is in the plan, I might add.
Correct.
yes. Vehicular access to and from the development must be safe and convenient. Number 1, any driveway or proposed street must be designed so as to provide and maintain minimum sight distance. Number 2 is points of access and egress must be located to avoid hazardous conflict with existing turning movements and traffic flows. 3 talks to the grade of plus or minus 3% for a minimum of 2 car lengths or 40 feet from the intersection. Those 3, are there any questions about? I think those are all demonstrated on C2. Is that confirmed? Any questions? Number 4, the intersection of any access or egress drive, or proposed street must function at a level of service of D following the development if the project will generate 1,000 or more vehicles. I don't think this pertains. Do we agree?
Agreed.
You're not going to have more than 1,000 vehicles going in and out.
No, we're scheduled at 50 or less.
Right. Number 5, where a lot has frontage on 2 or more streets, the primary access to and egress from the lot must be, we don't have frontage on 2 or more streets.
No.
We have one entrance off of Route 1, and that's it.
One entrance, one exit, correct? Number 6, where it is necessary to safeguard against hazards to traffic and pedestrians or to avoid traffic congestion, the applicant shall be responsible for providing turning lanes, traffic directional islands, and traffic controls within public streets. All right, I need help with that one.
That's not been requested, and it's really not necessary. It's for a high volume entrance. If you had a lot of traffic, you'd want to pull off where the traffic are going in and out without obstructing traffic on the road. There's 50 trips or less a day on this entrance, so that wouldn't be required on this application.
Okay. And number 7, access ways must be designed and have sufficient capacity to avoid queuing of entering on vehicles on the public street. Again, we don't really have the traffic coming in and out where that should be an issue. Number 8, following criteria to be used to limit the number of driveways serving a proposed project. No use which generates less than 100 vehicles trips per day shall have more than one two-way driveway. And obviously that is not going to be the case here.
We have 50 a day in one entrance. So.
Correct. And no use which generates 100 or more vehicles per day shall have more than 2 points of entry. No, because we have less than 50 per day. So then number 9, where an existing or planned public sidewalk is interrupted, there is no existing or planned public sidewalk, correct?
Correct.
And why am I? Then we go to C, access way, location and spacing. Access ways must meet the following standards. Private entrances, exits must be located a minimum of 75 feet from the closest intersection without a traffic signal and 150 feet from the closest intersection with traffic signals. I don't think we have any intersections nearby that need to be.
I can't think of one within a mile and a half, so it's
correct, yeah. Number 2, private access ways in or out of the development must be separated by a minimum of 75 feet where possible. There are no private access ways in or out of your driveway. There shall be no more than 2 access ways per lot. Shared access ways are encouraged. Again, that's not an issue in this case. Internal vehicular circulation frontage in feet. The layout of the site must provide for safe movement of passenger service and emergency vehicles throughout the site. Non-residential projects that will be served by delivery vehicles must provide clear route for such vehicles with appropriate geometric design to allow turning and backing of vehicles. Now, you don't have access to the back of the building, is that correct? By vehicles? Okay, but there is a sidewalk.
Yes, there's
To
a
the
sidewalk
back.
that goes around the back.
Okay,
I assume that whoever laid out this parking lot went by some sort of a formula where cars backing out of parking spaces aren't going to be jeopardizing cars backing out of parking spaces that are on the opposite side of the lot. I also noticed that the lot has a turnout area on the south side for cars coming out of the last slots to turn around and pull out of the lot. So it looks to me like there's plenty of access, plenty of turning allowance for any vehicles. The only thing I would question, I think it mentions in here somewhere about delivery vehicles and larger vehicles, but I don't see any choke congestion points that would prevent them from turning around either in there.
Well, I think the other thing you might consider is it says will be served by delivery vehicles. I think the intention there would be vehicles that are part of the business as opposed to somebody.
You're going to have
as
heating
opposed
oil
to-
trucks or FedEx trucks, or you're going to have propane trucks potentially. You're going to have, those kind of
Right.
vehicles.
Right,
And you
but-
also want to be able to get a fire truck turned around in there if you had to. So, But I think they could from the look of the layout of the lot.
But
Mhm. And I think
So
all
what are
of
you
those
saying,
we
Jay?
just addressed and are on C2.
Yes.
And except number 4, all roads must be designed to harmonize with topographic and natural features of the site. It looks like you guys are doing minimal removal of vegetation, just what's necessary for the parking lot, the addition, and to clear a bit in the backyard, which
Correct.
is lovely. So most of your borders and trees and natural design are all going to remain in place. Is that right?
That's correct. That was the intention.
So then E is parking lot and design. Off-street parking must conform to the following standards. Parking areas must be arranged so that it is not necessary for vehicles to back into the street. Check. All parking spaces, that is obviously on C2. All parking spaces, access drives, and impervious surfaces must be located within at least 5 feet from any side or rear lot line. Again, I think that's
And they
covered on
are.
C2.
Yes.
yes,
Number 3, in lots utilizing diagonal parking, and you are not,
We're not.
no diagonal. And I think A and B most go to the diagonal parking, obviously. F is pedestrian access, a system of pedestrian ways within the development appropriate to the type and scale of development. I don't think you have sidewalks and concrete and you have a ramp, but you're not doing public right-of-way for pedestrians. The system must be designed to link the project with residential, recreational, commercial facilities, schools, bus stops, et cetera. And obviously that's not part of this proposal.
Well, there is no pedestrian access from Route 1 up the driveway. So the only pedestrian access we're talking about is within the parking lot into the building, and that's provided in the plan.
Correct. Good. So 11.2, how do we feel about that one we just went over?
I
Do we
would
have a
move,
motion?
after reviewing 11.2, that the application meets all the standards that we've discussed and the facts that we found.
I would
And a
make
second?
motion that- Was that a motion?
Yes, that was a motion.
Then I would second it.
And all in favor of approving 11.2? Thank you. 11.3, stormwater management. Adequate provision must be made for the collection and disposal of all stormwater that runs off proposed streets, etc. To the extent possible, the plan must retain stormwater on the site. The stormwater runoff systems must detain or retain water that the rate of flow of the site. I think we've addressed this some, and most of it is covered on C3. All of your drawings, the dams, the riprap, the culverts, correct?
yes,
Yes.
that's correct.
Yeah, we don't have to be technical experts on this. We have a plan submitted by the applicant, and that is should be a technically adequate plan submitted. If we have any questions, we can, hire somebody to look at the plan and say, yeah, it's good or it's bad. But I think the idea is that they've taken the time to do an engineering study. They've created an engineering plan that looks perfectly adequate to me, and that we have to take into account the fact that they're submitting that as an application, so they have to follow that if we approve it.
So then are we saying that all these things under 11.3 we are satisfied with? Design of the stormwater drainage system, design of the storm drainage systems, cognizant upstream runoff, and the biological and chemical properties of receiving waters must not be degraded by stormwater runoff.
That's phosphorus export, and that's covered not as in this ordinance, but it is covered in the subdivision. That's a whole nother ballgame, and we're not in the watershed of anything, so it's really not a problem.
Great. So we need a motion for 11.3 to be approved.
I would move that the stormwater management plan submitted in the application is adequate and meets the standards of 11.3.
I would second that.
All in favor of approval of 11.3? Thank you. 11.4, erosion control. And it's a short one. All buildings, site, and roadway designs and layouts must harmonize with the existing topography and conserve desirable natural surroundings, etc. soil erosion and sedimentation of water courses and water bodies must be minimized by an active program meeting requirements. I think that's all covered on C2.
It's on C3, I think, isn't it?
It's
C3, yes, you are absolutely correct.
Well,
I'm sorry.
it's paragraph C3, but it's on C2.
That's true.
This is the whole plan is on C3 I've got here.
You're both right.
Yeah. C2 has the details of the dams and the.
Yeah, but C3
We're
is-
both right.
What a team.
Yeah, C3 is an erosion sedimentation control plant, and that's where all the words are. So that should be adequate as an approved plan for in the application.
So erosion control, a motion for 11.4.
I would move that the C3 plan submitted in the application is an overall adequate plan for erosion control of the site, and that meets the standard of 11.4.
Second that.
All in favor? Thank you. Sandy, are you in there? Good. 11.5, water supply provisions. The proposed development shall be served by an adequate supply of water for domestic and fire protection purposes. The means of providing this service may be public, private, or a combination of the two. We did talk a little about this the other day, and so you guys need to help me out here. I know that you're digging a well, but where did the discussion go last time you guys met about fire protection?
No fire protection.
That's two different subjects. Fire protection is going to be the pumper truck arriving with water in it and an ability to refill the pumper truck. What we're talking about here is water supply to the site, which is going to be a well, from what you say. We don't have the gallons per hour rate of the well because it hasn't been dug yet. Is that correct?
That is correct.
There's no well on the site now.
No.
So
No,
that
but
we
it
can
is on,
we
on
have to kind of
C2.
make an assumption with no information from the applicant. We have to make an assumption here that residential dwellings in the area that are off of wells have adequate water supply to them, and make the assumption that this, once a well is drilled, would also have adequate water supply to this facility. This facility doesn't use an inordinate amount of water, normal residents. So I don't know why there wouldn't be an adequate supply in the aquifer for a dug well or for a drilled well.
One of the things that was in a portion of the plan talked about huge amounts of water being used and somehow circumventing that. And the water was used with patients to constantly running
That's,
sinks or whatever. Have we circumvented that?
I'll address that when we come to the next with the sewage and wastewater disposal.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll need a motion to approve 11.5.
I would
Water
make a
supply
motion that
provisions.
11.5 meets the standards required.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. 11.6 is sewage and wastewater disposal. The development shall provide a method of disposing of sewage, wastewater that is compliant with state plumbing code. The provisions are proposed for on-site waste disposal. All such systems must conform to the subsurface sewage wastewater disposal rules. I see you do have a permit for your,
That's what I'd like to address.
yes,
First of all, just so everyone's on board, anytime you're going to have any kind of a business or dwelling, whatever, it's required by the state to bring in a soil evaluator or a soil scientist. And their function is to see what type of an application it is, and therefore, what is the water flow requirement per day? And what Sandy was talking about, there was an old measurement they took when they had the customers were running water all the time, and they gave what the amount was supposed to be, but there's a new formula. So the new formula, they estimated that the amount of projected use using the new formula would be 212 gallons per day. They said that the system in the initial write-up was designed for 220 gallons a day. It is not. It's designed for 196 gallons a day, which means it's running shy. And what is not taking into consideration is the fact that there are toilets that are going to be being used in there. My caution, Fred, that this septic system is under-designed. You may want to have the soil evaluator bump it up a little bit more. because it's running on the edge, which means you would be overusing it every day.
Okay, we'll check into that. I know I talked with Bob Weil and he said that he had sized the system based on basically the new formula, and I didn't cross-check that.
And so he
We
didn't check.
also reached out to another practice and used their value that they're actually producing.
And that
Okay,
was
but
the practice in Bangor.
Yes.
But there's a contradiction here, though. The contradiction is what was reported to us is that you're going to be using 212 gallons a day. Weil said on his design, it's 196 gallons a day, the system you have. And the formula does not, it just included what the hygienists are using in the cups and what the customers are using with the cups. Did not address the possibility somebody could be flushing the toilet during the day. And how many people are working there? So my caution is, Fred,
Yeah.
you can move ahead with it, but the system is not going to last as long as it should be.
Granted. Okay, we'll circle back to Bob and talk to him. We'll see whether.
In the plan that's been submitted to us for approval, going forward with that, is that something we need to consider, or we just have a plan that is considered adequate?
Everything that they're dealing with is dealing not with town ordinances, it's dealing with the state statute. And everything that I check for septic and plumbing has to do, I'm satisfying state requirements, not the town. So no, it's not in our court. It's something that I've raised the flag for them. They wouldn't have a problem with this maybe for 3 or 4 years, but I would just caution them, if you're going to put that kind of money into this project, it doesn't take that much just to bump it up a little bit bigger.
The ordinance says, Frank, upon the recommendation of the local plumbing inspector, the planning board may require reserve areas for replacement systems.
What the new laws are in place, if you have a septic system in place and somebody needs to add something for the facility or whatever, it says it's going to require more septic field, you used to have to take and update that septic system before you can go ahead with the change. The new law is, if you have a system in place and it's not big enough, you have to design either a new system or an addition to that field, record it with the registry of deeds, and not install it until it fails. Now, this is different. This is a new system and it hasn't even been installed. So I'm raising a flag for them just to take it just a little bit further.
Well, I guess the question comes up then, if they are planning to put a system in by the plan they're submitting to approval for us, is that adequate? And if they expand it on your recommendation, is there enough room for that?
What I would recommend, I am not the soil scientist or soil evaluator. I'm using what I consider a common sense approach. If they take it back to Bob Weil, and he is the one that's certified by the state to say this is adequate for what they're doing, I will sign off on it.
Okay.
How does that affect the planning board's approval of this standard?
Well, they do have a septic system in place. It would work, okay? And I'm just saying it's borderline by my calculations of what's going on.
And if it fails, it's
on them.
It's on them.
Exactly. It would not, I mean, it would probably last 3, 4, 5 years. Okay.
I suppose Fred and Keith can say duly noted and we move on, right?
Right, because we've raised the flag. Fred's going to look into it. Fred and Keith. So that's it.
Okay.
Okay, so then we are ready for a motion on 11.6, sewage and wastewater disposal.
I would make a motion that the plan submitted is adequate and meets the standards of 11.6. Discussion on the same is in the record of the meeting.
I would second it.
And all in favor of approving 11.6. 11.7, utilities. Development shall provide, the development shall be provided with electrical, telephone, and telecommunication service adequate to meet anticipated use of the project. All of this is fairly clearly outlined on your C2. Is that right?
Right.
And everything is underground, correct?
Correct.
Right, except for your overhead lighting, and then there is existing power. Are those lines coming down?
There's existing overhead from Route 1 to a pole, and then it goes underground up to the garage. So it's, or the existing building, excuse me. There's a small camp shed, whatever you want to call it. And that's where the service goes overhead to that, and then it goes underground up the hill into the building. So we weren't planning to change that
Oh, okay.
unless Central Maine Power says I have to.
Well, it says have as little visual impact as possible. You've gone from the street to one pole, then underground, correct?
Correct.
Mhm.
So that would meet that standard.
Very much so. So we need a motion on 11.7.
Make a motion that 11.7 meets the criteria for our approval.
Second.
And all in favor of approving 11.7. 11.8, natural features. The landscape must be preserved in its natural state insofar as practical by minimizing tree removal, disturbance, and compaction of the soil, by retaining existing vegetation insofar as practical. During construction, extensive grading and filling must be avoided as far as possible. I think we've already kind of covered this. You guys are doing a minimal amount of disrupting the landscape. And well, anyway, are there any more questions on that one?
I would move that the plan shows removal of in the natural state of only the materials necessary for reconstruction of the building and addition of the parking lot. And so it meets the standard under 11.8 for natural features.
Thank you, Jay. And all in favor of approving 11.8? Thank you. 11.9, groundwater protection. The proposed site development and use must not adversely impact either the quality or quantity of groundwater available to abutting properties.
Mhm.
Oh, sorry.
That's right.
Water quality protection. All aspects of the project must be designed so that no person shall locate, store, discharge, or permit the discharge of any treated, untreated, or inadequately treated liquid, gaseous, or solid materials of nature. You guys all have this in front of you. Is there anything here that raises a flag for you? Toxicity or temperature that may run off, seep, percolate, or wash into the surface or groundwater so as to contaminate, pollute, or harm the waters, cause nuisance, etc.
I think we have to take a look at the fact that this is a dental office.
Right.
So obviously what's going to be generated is minimal in terms of toxic or discharges or anything like that. It is in the watershed of the bay coming off the mountain, but it's on the west side of Route 1 and quite a distance from that. So I don't think 3 would pertain to this. So I don't see anything in the plan presented that would cause a problem with discharging anything of that nature. So I would make a motion that the water quality protection comes from the fact that this is only a dental office with 50 trips a day of cars in and out and no storage of anything toxic that's going to get into the environment.
I would second that.
All in favor of approving 11.9, groundwater protection? Thank you. 11.10, hazardous, special, and radioactive materials. You guys, I wasn't there last time you met, but I was listening. You guys determined that there were no hazardous materials to be concerned with except for the sharps, and they have a protocol in place on how to handle those. Is there anything else any of you came up with over the last couple of weeks?
Do we, either Fred or Keith, are you aware of anything that the state for dental offices considers to be hazardous that would have to be handled specially?
Not other than their hazardous waste, which is separated and transported off site to a medical waste facility for their gloves and stuff. And then the pad clad unit has some, but that's radioactive material in it. But that is such a minor amount that all we have to do is wrap it with plywood.
And those plans have been made, and you're required to follow those plans under the regulations for dental offices, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Okay, may we have a motion on 11.10? Hazardous special and radioactive materials.
11.10 hazardous materials has been covered by the applicant with the handling of the materials generated by a dental office and the regulations that go along with that. So the standards in the application are met by that fact. So I would look for approval for 11.10 as meeting the standard.
I would second it.
All in favor of approving 11.10? Thank you. 11.11, shoreland relationship. I think, as Jay has already pointed out, because of the position of the dentistry office from the Bay, is this a consideration right now, Jay?
Yeah. Well, the shoreline zoning ordinance doesn't apply because it's
No.
not 250 feet, so it doesn't really have a shoreline relationship.
Okay.
It's almost non-applicable.
Does that need to be voted upon, or we leave it as
I would make a
non-applicable?
motion that is non-applicable.
I think
And a
I'd agree with
second?
that, so I second it.
Okay, and all in favor of approving 11.11? Thank you. 11.12, solid waste management. Proposed development must provide adequate disposal of solid waste. I'm assuming you're going to have a dumpster or something, and a pickup. And I don't know that that was on the plan. Did we discuss a dumpster pad?
We aren't showing a dumpster pad, but we
Okay.
just could. It was more internal.
Or are you going to make several? Is Dr. Landry going to make trips to the transfer station every week, or
They'll probably
will
do
have-
your commercial pickup, but they'll
commercial?
come around the
Okay.
back and pick it up to the door.
There we go.
Is there
There is
adequate-
not a dumpster on the current site.
Say it again.
Required.
There is not a dumpster at the current site.
But what are the plans for handling of solid waste
The
material?
same way she's doing it now, which is she stores it inside the building and then transports it away.
So she does make her own trips to the transfer station.
I don't know if it's her or somebody else, but
Okay.
they have a
Ah.
dumpster.
Christine
Oops.
says she has a dumpster. Chris, okay. All right. A motion to approve 11.12.
I would make a motion that 11.12 meets the standards required.
Second.
All in favor of approving 11.12, based on Dr. Landry saying we do have a dumpster. 11.13, historic and archaeological resources.
Has any portion of the site been identified as an archaeological or historic?
Yeah.
Okay.
It hasn't been yet, anyway.
11.13, the applicant has said that there are no historic or archaeological resources on the site, so it meets the standard.
Second,
All in favor of approving 11.13? Thank you. 11.14, floodplain management. I
Not
believe
in
that
floodplain.
was, I'm sorry,
Not in floodplain.
not in floodplain. That was on Exhibit L in your packet, I believe.
I would make a motion that 11.14 does not apply.
Second.
All in favor of approving
That's the reason
11.14
it's not in the floodplain.
because it's not in the floodplain.
Right. Yeah.
11.15, general fire protection provisions. And you had that on exhibit, nope, you didn't on that one. The following provisions shall apply to all commercial and multifamily residential buildings. Proposed project must meet the requirements of the current state life safety code.
It
In
Fred
does.
addition,
addressed-
go ahead.
Fred addressed that they are submitting it and they will get back the approval or anything that the fire marshal says needs to be changed, and then they can get a building permit.
So we should consider that as a contingency to approval.
Which is out of their control, so that's valid.
Say that again?
It's out of their control. They're waiting for a state agency to return, so it's the
But
same as
should we make that
natural
a
resource.
contingency approval? Should we make
Yeah,
that a contingency to approval?
It is, because I can't give them a building permit until that comes back. It's the same thing as a NEPA permit. The NEPA permit, they're waiting for a response back, and all it says is if you wait 14 days, you can go ahead.
Does this one have a limit on how long they have to wait to assume they're approved?
They
Unfortunately,
can't,
no.
no, they
Okay.
cannot move ahead until they have that. Sorry, Frank.
That's all right.
Okay, so 11:15 we'll have to address as a contingency.
Well, I think A and B are covered by what Frank said, and that might be the contingency, but C, D, E, and F, we might want to take a look at. Landscape.
Okay. C is landscaping and other obstructions placed around the structures shall be maintained in a manner that does not impair or impede accessibility for fire department operations. The property owner shall be responsible for maintenance and enforcement of fire lanes. That is on C2, isn't that correct? All your roads and,
Yes.
now they can't get to the back though.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay.
Not
And
by vehicle, yes.
You're not going to secure any part of the site that would prevent the fire department from gaining access to the area or the building?
No.
Okay.
And go ahead. D, fire department personnel shall have ready access to locking mechanisms on any security gates which restrict
I
access.
was just asking if they said no, that
Okay.
no secured areas.
And D, E is during construction, vehicular access to all structures by fire department vehicles shall be provided and maintained. Trash and debris shall be removed from construction site. Flammable and combustible liquids and liquefied petroleum shall be stored and handled in accordance. I guess that's just, I don't know that that's on anything. It's just your word. Is that right?
It's standard housekeeping during
Great.
construction.
I would make the motion that the application requirements have been met for 11.15 general fire protection, other than the fact that the permit has not been received, and the permit cannot be issued for construction until it's received, and that's in the hands of the code enforcement officer. Otherwise, that section meets the standards.
Second that, please.
And all in favor of approving 11.15. Thank you. Section 12, good neighbor standards. We're kind of familiar with those.
You're such a good neighbor, Richard.
Don't ask.
12.1 is exterior lighting. I know you're adding some pole lighting up the road, but those all are shielded.
Correct.
Point downward. The lighting around the building, same,
Same cutoff. Yeah.
pointed downward. And then, of course, there's the exterior lighting, except for where security lighting is necessary, must be turned off between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. Does that just mean that these systems are on timers? And does that pertain to the poles going up the driveway and the one out at the road? And that's a question for all of you experts, because I don't know.
This is security lighting has to do with the building itself,
Okay.
unless you have concern for your employees after dark getting out to their vehicles. Then you'd have some down shielded lighting in the parking area only, not the whole roadway.
So the down shield light at the road, which will be the one I believe Keith mentioned last time, that will be illuminating the sign that you are transplanting. Would that be on all night then? Because it's a pole light? How does that work? No?
Can't be on after 11.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll
Okay.
put it on a timer.
Yeah.
Just to be clear, because there weren't any cut sheets submitted in the application for the type of utilities that you're using, this lighting is shielded and then it's directed downward, but is it shielded from directing upward?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, all right, that's fine.
And building entrances may be illuminated using recessed lighting and overhangs and soffits by using spotlighting focused on the building entrances, etc. Say for security purposes. Okay, I think all of that has been addressed. Any other questions on that, or do we need a motion to approve 12.1?
I would move that 12.1 exterior lighting, the plan is show the type of lighting used, the height of the light, the areas that are going to be lit, and it complies with the standards of the ordinance. So the application meets standards in 12.1.
I'd second that.
All in favor of approving 12.1? Thank you. 12.2 is buffering. Again, I think we've talked about this quite a bit. Shown on C2, you're doing very little to change the existing vegetation, of which there seems to be a lot around this site.
Mhm.
Development shall provide for the buffering of adjacent uses where there is transition from one type to another use, or for screening of mechanical equipment, loading, service areas, and storage facilities. Buffering shall be designed and maintained to provide a year-round visual screen in order to minimize adverse impacts, and may consist of fencing, evergreens, berms, rocks, boulders, mounds, etc. Development shall provide sufficient buffering when topographical or other barriers do not provide reasonable screening, and where there is a need, shielding neighboring properties from any adverse external effects of the development, and shield the development from negative impacts of adjacent uses. And you literally do have vegetation around the whole property, don't you?
Correct.
Yeah, this plan shows at least 60 to 70 feet of natural buffering between the road and the actual building site.
Yeah.
Undisturbed during the construction or even afterwards. So the natural buffering is in place, will not be disturbed. There's a road that's going to go in, but it's going to go in an existing path for an existing road. So nothing's really changing that term. Is there any plans to thin that buffer out so the building's visible, or?
No, not this time. We're pretty much leaving it.
The applicant's plan shows that the natural buffering that exists is not going to be removed, so it meets the standard of 12.2. That's a motion.
Second.
All in favor of approving 12.2 on buffering? Thank you. 12.3 noise. I'm not sure about teeth drilling. That could get kind of noisy.
I think it's
It's only in your own head.
Only internally.
Yeah, only internal.
I'm pretty sure somebody could probably make a motion on the 12.3.
Go ahead, Sandy.
I would make a motion that 12.3 meets the standards required.
Second.
All in favor of approving 12.3 on noise? Thank you. 12.4, storage of materials. Exposed non-residential storage areas, dumpsters, machinery, etc. Must have sufficient setbacks and screening, such as stockade fence or dense evergreen hedge, to provide a visual buffer sufficient to minimize their impact. The only thing I can think of is your dumpster. Don't know where that's going yet and how you're going to hide it. What do you think?
They said they're not going to have a dumpster. The amount that they have is so small that it's like they carry out a bag. Is that
Christine
correct,
said
Chris?
she does presently have a
disagreed with me.
dumpster.
Well,
It does have one.
Obviously, it's well disguised because we can't see it.
Not even on the plan. So that's something you have to figure out where that's going to go, and you will
Yes, once we know the size.
make sure it's buffered. Yeah, okay. Storage of materials, 12.4. Do we have a motion to approve?
It's been stated that if there is a dumpster utilized at the site, that it will be meet the standard by installation of a fence. So I would take that applicant at their word and say that 12.4 meets the standard.
I would second that.
And all in favor of approving 12.4? Thank you. And 13, design standards. So, well, some of this is landscaping though, isn't it? The following design standards shall be used by the planning board in reviewing application to site plan review. Landscaping plan must be provided as part of the site plan. You do have that. Landscape materials to integrate with the various elements. Really not putting anything new into your landscaping, is that right?
Correct, yes.
Thinning up a little just for building purposes, but
Mhm.
leaving it fairly natural. Landscape parking lots, landscaping around and within parking lots shades hot surfaces and visually softens the hard surface. Parking areas must be designed to create a pedestrian-friendly environment. There must be at least one island for every 20 spaces. I think since you only have, 13 spaces, that's not going to be an issue.
Correct.
13.2, business signs. We know you're relocating the existing sign. And 13.3, roadside and parking lot buffers. We talked about that before. It's on your C2. Generous landscape buffer between road and parking lot. You're not changing what's there. 13.4, site considerations. Do we need to, go ahead, Jay.
Yeah, we need to cover 13.1, 2, and 3. Contrary to what Frank was recommending, I don't know why we couldn't
Separately.
do 13.1, 2, and 3 in one motion because they are interrelated with each other. I think we should vote on them before we go to 13.4 because that's kind of a different
Okay.
different item. The one thing that's not mentioned in 13.1, 2, or 3 is the road, but that is in the plan as having been graded on the sides and planted. And I believe it even shows planting there. So the landscaping plan submitted takes into consideration the parking lot and the road and the walkways. And I would say that the business sign movement has been talked about and has been placed and it will be lit. And the roadside parking lot buffers, there are none because it's not near the road. So I would say that the application is in compliance with 13.1, 13.2, and 13.3.
Second,
And all in favor of approving 13.1, 13.2, and 13.3. Thank
Sorry,
you.
Frank.
13.
Yeah, it's only the general standards that you need to do that voting on each one. It's fine to wrap up 13 in one package.
Okay.
Well, I'm okay with that.
13.4, site considerations, setback and alignment of buildings in areas identified in the comprehensive plan as growth areas and shown on special district maps on file at Lincolnville Town Office. Buildings should be placed in conformance with existing and adjacent front and side setbacks. Since this building is an existing spot and you're not doing anything new, then I would say this does not pertain. Is that correct?
Well, it pertains in
And the fact that it's already on the,
right.
it's on the site plan.
It is going to be a building on a site oriented a certain way and placed a certain way within a certain scale. But by any stretch of measurement, it's going to meet that standard because this is designed really for larger development. So putting one building on one site and orienting it 100 feet away from the road certainly meets that standard. And also the parking lot would come into consideration here also. So is there anything else on that? Drive-through facilities and the roof of any canopy. So I would say that the application that we're reviewing and the proposal meets the standard of considering the site 13.4.
Second.
Second.
And all in favor? Thank you. And 13, that was 13.4 and 5.
We don't want to go there.
What?
Well, Frank knows what I'm talking about. This pertains to the
The view protection?
yes, the scenic view map on file. It just isn't going to come into play. It's not a consideration in this application at all. The design modification to minimize encroachment, that sort of thing, it doesn't really apply to this application. I don't want to call it not applicable, but it certainly isn't within the view protection of the scenic view map, which is something you may have to deal with later on and you're going to regret it, but it doesn't really pertain to this application.
Okay. So how do you handle that on this approval?
I would say that it's not in the scenic view shed map on file in the town office. So it's not applicable.
Okay. And does everyone agree that 13.6 is not applicable in this site plan.
Guys,
Do we have to vote on that? Or just say we agree?
we agree.
We agree. That also pertains to 13.7, Jay?
There's that map if you want to look at it and see if you can find anything on it.
Well,
Shame on
you
you.
are looking at a very.
He has it at arm's length at all times.
Yeah.
Jay, you got a very scenic Route 1 out there.
Yeah, I know.
And there are some ridges in the middle of it.
That's
Wait
not
till you
reasonable.
have to decipher that thing sometime. It's going to be fun.
You'll be in
Oh.
Carolina.
That was 13.6. What about 13.7, 8, and 9?
I'm going to say that this is not on a ridge, it's not on a hillside in view, and it's not on the shoreline. So I would say that really a 13.7 ridge line, 13.8 hillside development, and 13.9 shoreline development don't apply to this application.
I would second that.
Agreed. Everybody agreed? Just for
Agreed.
fun. Oh, yay, number 14. We don't have
You're all
to do.
done. You're all done.
We are all done. So
So
does
would we
that,
accept-
does that mean this is approved since we voted on them individually, or do you now do one
It-
vote?
It is approved, you've already approved it with
Woohoo.
contingency.
So we're done.
Well, congratulations, Fred.
Congratulations, guys.
Thank you.
And Dr. Landry, I know you're
Yeah.
listening.
Oh, that's great.
So what's the next step, Frank?
Well, I'm gonna turn off my computer.
So,
I think
No,
Greg's done.
I'll be waiting for Fred to get the feedback from the fire marshal's office. And then Fred will forward that back to me. And then I'll ask you to sign the building permit because you're the chair and it was approved by the planning board.
okay,
And then
And
they're all
that
set
won't
to
happen
go.
until you get the permit for the fire protection. Right?
That's what we're waiting for. It's not only fire protection. They look through the whole natural fire protection act, anything that may be a hazard that could be considered, like if they thought they needed a sprinkler system, so on and so forth, things of that nature.
Yeah.
And Fred, I guess you let me know how you make up and following up on that septic system if you would.
Surely
just out of
will, yeah.
Curiosity.
Yep.
Thank you. That's it.
okay.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Thanksgiving, have a great
Thanksgiving.
day
Wonderful.
and a
Thank
good
you.
weekend. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Night, board.
All right, Frank.
Okay,
And
good night,
Nancy,
Frank.
do we have some minutes to approve?
I sent them.
Yes, you did. So guys,
I thought we were told we didn't have packages to pick up this time because it was going to be just from what we did last time.
they were emailed,
They were emailed. Oh,
weren't they?
Yes.
I'm looking at it.
Yes, I got it.
Want me forwarded to you, Jane?
Yep, I got them.
Okay. I'm sorry. What'd you say, Jay? Yes?
Yeah, I got them, I guess.
So do you want to put off approving those? That's for the October 28th.
If you've gone over them and everybody finds them thing, and then I'll go along with the board.
Was this the one, Nancy, for Dr. Arman?
Yes.
Yeah. The
Yes.
fire
Okay.
one.
So if everybody, does everybody read them? Did they approve them?
Well, there's a major issue on it.
Oh,
Right behind my name, it said opted not to participant.
participant?
Okay. What line is that?
That would be line 44.
44.
Other than that, I would make a motion to approve, but
With corrections.
With corrections.
with
Okay.
correction.
So all in favor? Is that enough of us? And then we're meeting
Would you do
again.
it again? Would you do that again for hands, please? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, thank you.
Way to participant, Sandy.
And
Not a lot of worse things.
so our next meeting is December something. And we will go back to discussing Dr. Arman and the gun shop, correct?
Is he scheduled so far?
I thought he was. Am I just daydreaming that? Yeah, I think we had
I
him
haven't
down for
seen
that
anything.
first meeting in December.
Now, that was a preliminary, and at the same time, we found it complete, so that'll be reviewed.
Correct. Yeah,
Good.
okay. So is that all we need?
I'm showing some chats that are pending.
Let's see
Do we
what
need
people
to-
are saying there. So Christine is saying that they have a dumpster, they have weekly pickups, they're waiting on state fire marshal, very tight schedule, and I'm concerned with this. Thank you. And have a happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you for your help. Good night.
All right, guys, good night.
Good night.
Have a wonderful weekend and a happy
too.
Thanksgiving.
Thank you. You too.
Right.
Good night, David.
Good night, David.
Night,
Night
Jeff.
all.